Hi.
Hi.
I was just telling them that when I saw your calendar that you were posting that you were doing 30 days of connection, I was thinking like, yes, I should do that thing, but also it's both hard and easy in homeschooling. And I think this applies with virtual learning too, right? We're in this environment where we're like doing work at home, and so then you kind of get lost in the doing the work and forget that like instead of all of that staying at school and you're just at home doing the connection piece, there's that balance. So I work a lot with parents who have children who have FASD, and FASD is fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. It's the most common form of developmental disabilities, affecting 5% of the population. And part of that gap in us getting the help that we need for our kids is because people kind of assume it's like a disability that occurs because a woman has drank a lot of alcohol, but very little alcohol can cause lifelong effects. And so as we're trying to advocate for our kids in schools, sometimes we hit roadblocks. And so I'm spending a lot of time this week covering homeschooling, because as we're working with a kid who has symptoms of kind of like ADHD and autism put together, schools are like, I don't know what to do with that. And so as many of us turn to homeschooling, what could that look like? And a big barrier for people considering homeschooling is they say, we can't even do a worksheet at home, and now you're saying we're going to learn everything at home. Like, there's no way, we can't, our relationship would crumble. And I have found that our relationship's actually better now that we're doing this. And so, but I'm a newbie. I'm like a post-COVID homeschooler. So I wanted to get some expertise in here to talk about that. So what has been, because I know you have written down, like, this was kind of a good reminder for yourself as well. So what have you kind of like learned during this month, and why do you think that connection is something that homeschoolers kind of have a better opportunity to maintain?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, connection is very, very important. I would probably argue that it's the most important piece when I think about connecting with my child. Like, that has to be front and center before even attempting to do any of the other curriculum things. And when I think about connection, real connection is a connection that is authentic and where we can be exposed in front of one another. And I think that between parent and child, I mean, in all relationships, parent and parent, but even in parent and child relationships, I think there are so many times where there's not that authenticity and that real connection, because there are so many layers in between the two of us that are blocking that connection. And so throughout the month, I started to think about what some of that entails. I think that those layers tend to revolve like broadly around fear, guilt, and shame. I can explain those. So basically, when you think about guilt, sometimes parents are carrying guilt about failing their children somehow. Like, they carry the guilt of their child not wanting to connect with them, or when they say, we can't even do a worksheet. Sometimes there's like a layer of guilt there that's like, maybe it's my fault, kind of thing. And then there's fear. There's times where our kids fear our reactions. They fear, what response we're going to give them. So they hold back, and there's not that authentic connection there. And sometimes there's shame also around failed obligations, or sometimes they even feel that they can't even expose their entire self. Like, they can't even tell us what their real interests are, because we've basically created this little educational box for them to fit in. And it's like, you have to do it this way at this time, and this is how we're going to get school done. And they have no voice to even say, I don't like this, or I don't understand this, or can we do this differently? And they shut down. And so there's like so many ways that those layers of connection can be built up. And so over the 30 days, I thought, well, I want to focus on removing layers so that there's just that place for authentic, deep connection. And, when you think about the ways you can connect with people, you can connect, at least, when I think about it, my husband and I talk about this a lot. We break it down into 3 ways. We can connect mind to mind, body to body, and heart to heart. And so, mind to mind, we're like exchanging ideas and, talking together, body to body, could be physical touch, and it doesn't always have to be hugs, but sometimes even just like putting my hand on your shoulder, or some sort of way of connecting physically, and then heart to heart where our emotions are connecting. And so when I created that 30 days calendar, my focus was like, I wanted to think about what kinds of things are just like ways to just remove layers and connect heart to heart, body to body and mind to mind. And doing that has given me such life this past month. It really has, those places and moments where you're even surprised because you thought that a deep connection was there, but then you realize, oh no, this could get deeper, or this was suffering. But because you are paying attention to it now, you can work on it. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things on here, because I printed it out, so because I only have so many screens. One of the things was to sit next to your kid and just work next to them, which with many of our families, not all of them are adopted parents, and so that connection piece can be very challenging, extra challenging. Especially with older kid adoption, you haven't developed that touch that you would have when you were caring for them physically, right? And so the idea of just sitting next to a kid and working, I'm like, yes, we will answer your question in a minute, Kat. I know you want to know. So I think that that's such a good way of looking at it in those different ways. And what you're saying almost makes me feel like this process has helped you be more present, which is a thing that I super duper struggle with. So I planned on using many of these things as well. We just got out of a renovation cycle, and we basically had our summer in the fall because we schooled all summer. And then another thing that you guys do, I know you work with Wild and Free, and your schooling situation is very fluid. And so can you describe kind of what that looks like and how that gives more space for like learning what they want to learn, kind of stuff that you were talking about?
Yeah, so one of the things I think that people who come to homeschooling from the world of public school or private school, and that's really all they know, they have no comparison model. I think that they often start out and begin by thinking that they have to replicate that at home. But the beauty of homeschooling is that you can completely re-envision what your day looks like and what learning truly means, and in what context that learning actually really happens. And you have more freedom there to be able to explore that according to your personality, your children's personalities and gifts, and the things that you enjoy. And learning should be a joy. And if there are places where it feels like drudgery, those are the places where I want to personally press into and say, well, let's explore why, and maybe make some changes there, because it shouldn't be drudgery. So we try to leave a lot of space in our day for joy. And we do that by having, times together, doing things that we enjoy doing, reading aloud books together. We have weekly poetry tea times. We spend our mornings doing project-based learning, which is basically the kids exploring their own interests. And I'm really there as a mentor, trying to help guide them and help them figure out how to get their questions answered. Like, you're largely learning how to learn, but it's wonderful because it's not me saying, you should learn this. It's them saying, hey, so my son just the other day, he's really obsessed with this Roblox game called Lumion Legacy. And so I just said to my kids, we were all sitting around the table, and I said, can we brainstorm some ways to help him think about how he could explore this interest, during project time? And the things that they were saying were completely amazing. And my son really tapped into being interested in the history of like how and why these games were created. And I'm like, that's an awesome thing to want to learn, And so we do that kind of thing, and we leave space for that kind of thing. And then even, the times when we are using a curriculum, I always, have that philosophy ringing in my mind that curriculum does not control us. We are in control of that curriculum. So if there are places and things that I need to stop and take more time with, we do that. If it does that this is the topic and these are the activities, but those activities don't mesh with my family, and I think of new activities, like there's the freedom to do what you think is best for your child. And there's a beauty in figuring out what those things are if you don't know.
Yeah, I think that's been my experience this last few months because we just started, right? So I'm like, oh, that's something that you're really interested in, or oh, like that's how you would respond to that kind of question. And so then I know that if I want, like if I'm trying to get a means to an end, I've had to adapt a lot on how I'm presenting information so that we can go in the right direction. Of course, my kids' brains work like super uniquely, so it's kind of like an experiment in and of itself, like trying to figure out what the best way to teach.
Mm-hmm.
I would missed my degree opportunity, but degree in communication. I needed it in education. Definitely never saw myself here homeschooling. So you provide services for families, though. So can you tell us more about kind of what your offerings are?
Sure. So I have a coaching program. It's called Thrive at Home, and it was created to be able to help homeschool moms feel like they have a place to grow. And we grow in the areas of confidence, capability, and clarity. So sometimes we need to figure out the things that we need to be really clear about. And it's surprising sometimes we think it's one thing and it's really another. Like, a lot of homeschooling, I believe, is just really good parenting skills. And so we talk a lot about those things like connection. We spent the whole month talking about connection, and talking about authentic connection, and, you know, doing the 30-day challenge together and really getting deep and discussing those things. And then, you know, when you have clarity, when you know what's really important, when you know what you should be focusing on, then you can grow your capability and you can say, well, what are the skills that I need to really learn to be able to do this? And that's what the Thrive at Home coaching program helps to foster, all of those pieces. And then in doing those, once those pieces are connected, you tend to feel more confident, right? Because you have clarity and you feel more capable. And so you are now not sitting there saying, I cannot homeschool, I cannot do this. You actually end up feeling confident about it. And so that's what it was designed for. That's why it was created, and I love it. I love being able to encourage moms in that way.
No, I mean you're such an asset to other parents. So many of us are just starting out. Your connection, your 30 days of connection calendar is on a link in bio. I know because I just tested that theory. As is your website. You have a lot of cool blogs up also. So there's lots of ways people definitely should follow you for more information. I just think that there's a lot of really positive and connection driven opportunities for homeschooling right now, that was my thing for virtual schooling last week. My caregiver tip was, if schooling is getting in the way of connection, then we're not doing it right. Something's broken and we got to work with the school to get it fixed, because that's the most important thing. You don't work really hard for a boss that screams at you all the time.
Right.
So.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. And that was a lot of awesome nuggets, but I'm hoping people will connect with you and learn some more from you.
Thank you so much for having me on your live, Aubrey. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.